Ahoy! Today we have a bonus balance for SMITE for patch 9.9. Comes with a few new skins and a few interesting balance changes, especially to tanks. First, a quick look at the skins. We have this Agni skin right here, Tsukuyomi skin. We have the Bakasura skin that I think a lot of people have probably been waiting for. And we have the Zeus skin. These were already shown in the previous update show, but they're coming out now. And then there is a little fix to the Conquer Scorpions here, which didn't regen HP once leashed. And that brings us to the main changes. So there are multiple changes here to the damage output of tanks specifically, solo laners and guardians, but mostly solo laners really, because most of these items are affecting solo laners more. And that's because they generally just don't want tankier characters to be able to deal quite as much damage. The first one of those is a nerf to Bluestone Brooch. The bonus damage scaling on the item's passive is decreased from 7.5% to 6% of the target's current health. Looks like a relatively small number, but I feel like it's gonna have a fair bit of impact over the course of a match. We have something similar with Gladiator's shield, decrease the bonus damage scaling on the item's passive from 35% to 30% of your protections from items and abilities. Again, this is by itself not huge, but across multiple procs and so on, it'll add up and it'll definitely be somewhat noticeable. And then the third one here is Manticore spikes. Decrease the damage on this item's passive from 4 or 8% to 3 or 6% of your allies or the item owner's max HP. I think this is actually going to be something that you'll feel, like 2% less health from a tank. That's probably something, you know, so say like if we're talking about like a massively tanky tank with 4,000 health, then this would be 80 damage. So it's decent enough. What's interesting about that to me is that Manticore spikes wasn't really picked up, as far as I recall. The scaling change was first, and it wasn't really used until the stat change happened. And I think those were split. And I think it's interesting that, I mean, they have nerfed the stats, but I think it's interesting that they're not nerfing the stats further, but actually looking at the passive specifically, which was meant to be more of a damage-sided thing. Like, obviously, it's a bit of a gimmick item, and it's gotten more popularity than I think it was intended to. But I don't think it was for the passive primarily. I think it's an interesting shift, and I'm not opposed to it being handled this way, but I am a bit surprised. I thought that we would see more nerfs to the base stats rather than this. And then we have a change that goes in a very different direction, which is kind of interesting and out of context looks kind of bad, and that's the Transcendence nerf here. Decreasing the physical power of the item from 40 to 35. The reason being that they want to open up more build options to compete with Transcendence, and they're also saying that they want to introduce some newly buffed items in the next main update to shift builds across all SMITE classes. It's a bit strange that they're putting this particular nerf ahead of that, because it kind of feels like you're getting the nerf, but you're not getting the compensation you're meant to get, and you get that later. But I think that a Transcendence nerf isn't an inherently bad idea. So the reason for that is that for hunters, for a very long time now, a lot of the meta builds have included Transcendence over other options. And the exceptions are relatively few, I would say. Generally speaking, for most hunters, it is more convenient, I would say, to go on Transcendence, and you get that better power spike. And that's why they do it. And I think a meta where both Transcendence and Devils builds are valued around equally will always be best. We obviously had the opposite as well, where Devils was just way more highly valued. I think a middle ground is definitely ideal. And I think for Assassins, to be honest, a Transcendence nerf should never be an issue. There are metas where Assassins can utilize Transcendence well, and we had a few of those in the last years, I would say. But the further you look back in SMITE, like the less commonly Transcendent was actually built, until you go like way back when there really weren't that many options. But like there are only a few assassins that really very consistently throughout like their entire presence have built Transcendence, like Bastet, for example, because she just relies on having the super high scalings and everything. But generally most assassins have, for the majority of time, rely more on builds surrounding flat pen and getting cooldown from Jotans and stuff like that. And I don't think it's necessarily bad if Transcendence becomes unviable for assassins because I think, or for junglers rather than assassins, because I think that having this power curve for a jungler where they have to stack Transcendence in the jungle, which it's really not designed to do because it kind of, I mean, it doesn't necessarily take longer depending on how good you are last and everything, but it's kind of meant to be stacked on a wave with good last hits rather than the camps. I think that is better because it also allows the junglers to go for more aggressive items without feeling like they're leaving behind their late game. And those aggressive items give them a better power curve and a better power spike early in the game. And I personally think that feels better for junglers because if you're playing a jungler and you're not able to make aggressive early game plays as consistently, in my opinion, it kind of feels bad. It kind of feels not like my idea of what a jungler is meant to do in Smite. Obviously, feel free to disagree. This is a very personal opinion, but as such, I'm okay with the Transcendence nerf. We will have to see what happens like in return in the next patch. Gonna be interesting if they're also like touching devils or something like that. We'll find out about that. And then we have some god changes too. We have Yuhuang getting a change to Dueling Dragons, decreasing the magical power scaling from the push damage from 60 to 50%. They're writing this like long text about why they're doing this, like with him being like highest ban for ranked and being played highly prioritized in the SPL. Given all that, it seems like a relatively minor nerf, like 10%. I don't know. Like if it was a nerf to like a base ability, I would be like, okay, yeah, that's something you'll notice. But to the ult, I feel like if you don't know that this nerf happened, you're probably never gonna know. But that's just me. And then we have Cabrakan. So Cabrakan is interesting, is Cabrakan is already getting nerfed by the Manticore spike nerf, not insignificantly. And then he's getting nerfs on top of that. So he's getting a nerf to Reflection Shield, decreasing the base damage from 100 to 320 to 80 to 300. So an early game flat nerf as well, which will be felt. And the same thing is happening to Tremors too, with it going from 22 to 62 to 18 to 58. So even the level 1 pressure, if you going Tremors, is going to be lower. And yeah, I am surprised to see such drastic nerfs all at once. I can see that with the current meta, there is a need to take him down a notch, but I am surprised that he's basically getting hit from 3 angles, depending on where you play him. I'm curious where that will leave him afterwards. And then the last one, also honestly a bit of a surprise to me, which is King Arthur. King Arthur is getting a nerf, which is to Excalibur's Wrath, decreasing the max HP damage from 5 to 11% to 5 to 9% on the landing hit. And so I'm surprised in so far that King Arthur's performance is basically entirely top end heavy. Like high level players, very high level players, can perform well with King Arthur, but below the highest rank, he's really not a problem at the moment. It's actually underperforming quite significantly. So normally when they're doing changes like this, where it's targeted mostly at the high end, they're trying to do the change in a way that mostly affects the high end of play as well, the highest level of play as well. In this case, this will affect the lowest level of play equally, I feel. I guess you could make the argument that a lower level player will not get Excalibur's Wrath as often, but overall it seems like a more like blanket nerf than anything to me. Which again, I don't necessarily have a problem with, but I am, like the Cabrakan nerfs, a bit surprised about. We'll see what that means for the next patch. I have a feeling this is just the beginning, with them already teasing more significant changes coming soon. So we'll find out about that. And that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. Hope to see you for the next one soon. SLOTH out.